Hey there, and welcome to your IGCSE Study Buddy. If you're getting ready for your business exam, you have come to the right place. Today, we're going to totally nail Section 1.2, which is all about classifying businesses. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll get the key concepts and know exactly how to use them to score big on your exams. Ready? Let's do this.
So, let's just dive right in. Think about it for a second. You've got businesses that grow our food, businesses that build our cars, others that handle our money, and even the ones that sell us our morning coffee. With literally millions of businesses out there, how on earth do we even begin to organize all of that? It seems super complicated, right? But there's actually a pretty simple system to make sense of it all.
And here it is. It all comes down to just two main ways of classifying them. First, we look at what a business does, its activity. And second, we look at who owns the business. Yep, that's pretty much it. So let's dig into that first method.
Okay, so this first method is all about figuring out a business's role in the whole production chain. We basically split every single business into one of three groups, or economic sectors: the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary.
First up, we have the primary sector. This is the very beginning of everything. These are the businesses that literally take raw materials straight from the earth. So think of anything that involves harvesting, mining, or collecting what nature gives us.
Yeah, and these examples really drive the point home. We're talking about the absolute fundamentals: farming for our food, mining for metals and minerals, fishing from the oceans, cutting down timber, and even picking coffee beans. You see the pattern? Every single one involves taking something raw, something natural, straight from the planet.
Okay, so we've got our raw materials. What happens next? Well, that brings us to the next stage, the secondary sector. This is where businesses take all those raw materials from the primary sector and turn them into something else. This is the world of manufacturing, of making, of building stuff.
And the key word here is transformation. So a car factory takes steel and other materials and builds a car. The steel industry takes iron ore and turns it into steel. A textile mill turns raw cotton into the cloth for our clothes. And remember those coffee beans we saw being picked? This is where they get roasted and packaged, ready for the shops. And that brings us to our third and final category, the tertiary sector. You'll definitely hear this called the service sector, and man, is it a big one. Businesses here don't actually make a physical product. Instead, they provide services. They're all about selling you an experience, their expertise, or just plain convenience. Just look at how varied this is. Banking, staying in a hotel, booking a flight, getting a haircut. In all these cases, you're not walking away with a new physical thing. You're paying for a service. So it's really no surprise that in most developed countries, this sector is absolutely massive.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The mix of these three sectors in any given country, well, it tells a fascinating story about where that country is on its economic journey. That balance isn't fixed at all. It can change dramatically as a country grows and develops.
And to really see this in action, we're going to look at some classic exam-style data. We'll use a made-up country, let's call it country H, and we'll see just how much its economy changed in a little over 10 years. Okay, take a close look at this table. It shows us how much each sector contributes to the country's total economic output. It's GDP. So back in 2000, you can see the primary and secondary sectors were the big players, right? Together, they made up 75% of the entire economy. But now, look at the numbers for 2011. Both of them have shrunk a lot, and something else has just exploded. And this bar chart just makes that story crystal clear. The tertiary sector, the service sector, more than doubled. It went from just a quarter of the economy all the way up to a whopping 60%. That is a huge jump, and it's a classic sign of a developing economy. So the big question is, why does this happen? So what's driving this massive shift? Well, there are a few key things going on. First off, as a country industrializes, people leave farms to work in factories, boosting that secondary sector. Then, as people get better educated and start earning more money, two things happen. You get a skilled workforce that's perfect for service jobs, and people have more cash to spend on things like tourism and banking. And finally, for a lot of developed countries, it becomes cheaper to have things made overseas, which shrinks their own secondary sector and makes that tertiary sector even more dominant. Okay, so we've totally covered classification by what a business does. That's the three sectors. Now let's switch gears to that second method of classifying businesses, and this one's a lot simpler. It's all about who owns and controls the business. First up, you've got the private sector. Pretty straightforward.
These are the businesses owned by you, me, any private individual or group of people. The key thing is they are not run by the government, and their main goal, their whole reason for being, is usually to do one thing: make a profit.
And then, on the flip side, you have the public sector. These organizations are owned and controlled by the government. They're funded by us, the taxpayers, and what they're trying to achieve is completely different from a private business.
And this slide just lays it all out perfectly, side by side. The private sector, think Apple, Tesla, Adidas, is all driven by profit. But the public sector, think of your public library, state schools, things like that, is driven by the goal of providing a service to society, especially services that a private company might not find profitable enough to offer.
All right, you've soaked up all the theory. Now for the bit you've been waiting for: how to actually use this knowledge to score marks and absolutely crush your exam. Let's take a look at a couple of real past paper questions.
Okay, here's a classic 2-mark question. Super simple, super direct. Now, see where it says 2 marks? That's a huge clue. It's the examiner telling you, I'm looking for 2 separate correct points. So, how do we write the perfect answer to grab both of them?
Check this out. This model answer is exactly what they're looking for. It's a simple, killer combo: definition plus example. First, you give a clear definition. It provides services. Boom, that's 1 mark. Then you back it up with a solid example, like a bank or a shop. Bingo, 2nd mark. It's a simple formula that works every time for these definition questions.
Okay, let's level up. Here's a trickier one, a 4-mark question using that table we looked at earlier. Now notice the keywords here. It doesn't just say identify the changes. It says you have to identify and explain them. That's where you earn the big marks.
Don't panic. There's a simple 4-step playbook for this. First, you identify a change. You say, the primary sector fell from 35% to 15%. That's your first mark. Then you explain it. This is likely because people moved to other sectors for higher wages. That's mark number 2. Then you just rinse and repeat for the second change. Identify the rise in the tertiary sector for mark 3, and then explain it by saying that higher incomes mean people can spend more on services. And that's your 4th mark. Identify, explain, repeat. You got this.
So there you have it. We've broken down the 2 main ways businesses are classified, and, more importantly, how you can turn that knowledge into real exam marks. Which leaves us with a bigger question to think about. As technology keeps changing our world, which of these sectors do you think is going to be the most important for a country's future? Thanks for joining this Study Buddy session. Good luck, and go ace that revision.